Well, Gavin, thank you so much for joining us tonight again. As an established expert, sharing all the what's going on on the regulatory side of things. One big question for you, we've heard a lot about SCA, strong customer authentication, all the hiccups that are happening around it. Do you mind shedding more light in terms of, is it going to get better? What should we expect in the next 3 to 6 months? Or are we going to wait until the deadline of March 2021 when everything is going to be ready for strong customer authentication being ready for everyone else?
Well, the issues relating to strong customer authentication are different depending on what circumstance it is. There's a different deadline that's been applied where it's been encouraged and orchestrated by the EBA. But that was for payments in the cards channel, e-commerce, those sorts of things. Yeah. As it applies to open banking, it's been a very different situation. The European Commission and the EBA have encouraged the TPPs and the banks to work together to come up with a joint statement where we encourage the national regulators of the member states of the European Union to exercise the maximum flexibility in applying the rule of SCA to ensure that the APIs had time to mature, and at the same time that banks that weren't quite ready with their API didn't get discouraged from completing it, because we do want to go down the API route as a TPP community, but only moving on to APIs of quality, not moving on to rubbish. So what we have been doing as a trade association is working with the national regulators to try to come up with plans and proposals to try and keep everybody on the track of focusing on quality. Here in the UK, where your event is this evening, we've had the Financial Conduct Authority very graciously provided us with an additional 6 months of leeway, where their hope is that the APIs are now finished and of the right quality across the market, and where the TPPs then will have 6 months to transition their customer base from the old technology, sometimes known as credential sharing through to screen scraping, to actually transition the customer base onto the new method.
So you're talking about high quality of APIs.
Yeah.
Tonight we're talking about premium APIs. So how, is it the type of APIs you're referring to, and what's the importance of these APIs then?
Well, the quality of the APIs enable the actual proper flow of transaction between the bank and the fintech on behalf of the customer to take place in a more consistent way, with higher degrees of resilience, hopefully with no deterioration in the functionality. And I guess when we're scrutinizing the qualities of the APIs that are coming through across the European Union, some of the APIs have been either not ready on time, just completely not delivered at all. Equally, some of them have been functionally reasonable but of low quality in terms of their uptime and resilience, and some of them have had reasonable resilience and uptime but very low quality of functionality, and some have both low functionality and low quality. So we really, in order for it to be at least as good as the customer facing interface that the end customer, the consumer, uses, it has to marry to all of those issues. And as we've learned in the UK, it took a very long time for that to mature. It took many months for most of the banks to reach that level of consistency and functionality. One of the things that hasn't helped, of course, is the goalposts keep moving. All the way through this period, the RTS was delivered late, these regulatory and technical standards that apply to PSD2, and then beyond that, the communities on both sides, the ASPSP, the bank and the fintech, have been writing to the EBA for answers to various questions, and those answers are still coming through. So despite the fact we're supposed to have delivered, the decision making around what qualities need to be in place continues to adjust. probably the most important thing that the fintech community is desperate to see now as an adjustment is some relief from the 90-day re-authentication issue. This is a system whereby typically the way it has been implemented, the customer would have to log in to each of their banks that they've connected to an individual app once every 90 days to maintain the connection. In no other market do you have to authenticate yourself with perhaps your competitor. It's a very strange setup, and it does nothing to improve the security of the system. One of the aspects of the design may have been so that the end customer was aware they were still connected to an app. But it's reasonable to suppose that now that all of these fintechs or regulated actors, that they might reasonably be trusted to communicate with their own customer that they were still connected every 90 days. So what we're arguing for is an immediate transition from the authentication taking place at the bank to the fintech simply saying to their customer, we'd like to, via a push notification, we'd like to remind you that you're still connected. If you wish to disconnect, here's how to do it. It'll reach the same outcome, and it's going to lead to far less accidental attrition this way around. Well, open banking excellence is one way of exchanging information. So, people come along, they obviously enjoy working in this domain, they enjoy each other's company, and if they go away even just a little bit more informed, then that's obviously a good outcome.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Gavin.